And welcome to the Concealed Carry podcast, part of the concealedcarry.com network. I guess I should have said it's been a while since we did this. This is the
No, I think you got it. This is the Concealed Carry. No,
yeah.
welcome to the Concealed Carry
I forgot the
podcast.
episode number.
Yeah, you did. You did. You missed the initial intro. This is the Concealed Carry podcast.
Let's do this again.
Season. Yep, there we go.
It's been too long, which is sad to say. Hey, everybody. This is the Concealed Carry podcast, season 10, episode 20.
Okay.
That takes me back to the good old days when you used to actually do that. And welcome to the Concealed Carry podcast, part of the concealedcarry.com network of podcasts, brought to you by HK. Today is December 20th, 2024. As of recording of this episode, I am your host, Riley Bowman, also joined by fellow host, Jacob Paulson.
Yep.
Howdy is what you used to say.
Well, how about this one? Riley is the guy who recently tore his rotator cuff.
Well, presumed tear, but yes.
Yes, he's not feeling good about his shoulder right now.
Let's just say I'm a bit limited, and it is affecting the ability to draw my gun, which is not cool. But we're working through that. So, and Jacob is the man who, oh man, you caught me off guard there. Let's see. The man who likes chocolate-covered peanuts.
I do. In fact, I don't know if you don't like chocolate-covered peanuts. I don't even know if we can be friends. It's like, what's wrong with you?
You got really excited yesterday when our landlord dropped off the Christmas holiday, whatever, basket of goodies.
Yeah, it's like, ooh, chocolate-covered peanuts.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, I mean, like, I'm not saying I don't like them. I just, you were
Of course
like,
you like them.
chocolate-covered peanuts, and I'm like, there's the toffee roasted ones.
Yeah,
I'm all about that.
You know, I'm not sure where I land though with like your average, whatever local mountain house, chocolate covered peanuts, which were in this gift basket, versus just plain old boring M&Ms. I mean, is one really better than the other? Isn't it the same? Isn't an M&M just a chocolate covered peanut?
Sure. Well, yeah,
with a candy shell.
Right. I think the candy shell is nice.
Yeah, I appreciate the candy shell. For one, it's a melt layer between my hot hand and the chocolate.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, enough shooting the breeze, I guess. It's been a while, and we apologize for just coming to you with a podcast episode. We are here now in the holiday season, Christmas in just a few days. So I guess to get it off our chests, Merry Christmas to everybody. Happy holidays, and we hope that you all have a wonderful and happy new year as well. We look forward to 2025 and hopefully great things to come. We certainly are endeavoring to do so, to bring great things to you. We're just coming off the tail end of the 21-day concealed carry challenge, which if you missed it, we're sorry, but look for maybe more opportunities in the future. But those that have participated have seemingly really enjoyed the 21-day challenge.
Yeah, that or the naysayers just aren't commenting. But so far, the feedback we're getting is very good. Yes.
Yeah. So it's been a lot of fun, and we got a lot of plans for 2025. So there you go. Today's episode is sponsored, brought to you by, you see it here on the screen, those of you watching, CCW Safe, which is our preferred choice of self-defense legal coverage. Definitely encourage you to check out. Just go to the website, ccwsafe.com. Do a little bit of research there. Not saying that's what you have to go with, but I think if you actually research the different options out there, that you'll find that CCW Safe is awesome.
They're the best for the dollar. They are the best dudes. They have the best team. They will actually take care of you the best. And lately they've been making some nice updates to the product. They've also been investing a lot more in content and supporting our industry. Frankly, just doing things to work with more people who are out there training people, teaching people, and doing good things. So, anyway, hats off and thank you to CCW Safe for sponsoring this content.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, CCW Safe. What would you say in like a 15-second elevator pitch of why should someone have a legal coverage program that specific for self-defense?
I think there's two factors here. One is sort of this like peace of mind to act, right? In fact, we do a survey with people who have taken a class and gotten a permit in recent history. We have over 10,000 people have completed the survey. And one of the surveys that we have goes out 6 months afterwards. And it asks, are you currently carrying a gun on a regular basis, yes or no? And if people say no, we push up a list of reasons why. Which of these best describes why you are not? And a very common one that people select is I'm afraid of the legal consequences. It
Mm,
says, I think it says, I'm afraid of the legal and civil consequences. So people don't act; they choose not to carry, or they are maybe scared to get involved because they're afraid of potential legal and civil
mm,
liability. So there's, this is something we don't talk about often when we talk about this with these kind of companies, these self-defense coverage providers like CCW Safe, is this simple truth that you need to have the peace of mind that, hey, someone's got my back if I go do what needs to be done. So I think that's the first and probably most important, relevant thing that they provide. But obviously, the second is, yes, when said incident occurs, you can't afford to not have their coverage. I met Kyle Rittenhouse recently. Now, Kyle Rittenhouse, I'm not saying we're best friends, just saying I met him. And, he was very fortunate to get really quality legal defense services, basically at a very low price, free to nothing. But most of us are not going to have that kind of luck. Most of us are going to have to pay big bucks. George Zimmerman, however long ago that was, dude still hasn't paid his bill to his attorneys. And, and they've moved on. They're not like, sending him to collections or something. It was just a reality that he was not in a position to pay what it was going to cost. But luckily, a lot of the community came together and helped him out. So you're not likely to be a Kyle Rittenhouse. You're not likely to be a George Zimmerman. You're likely to be the guy you've never heard of, who unfortunately just doesn't have the money. So you're still going to have a legal defense. You're still going to find an attorney who's going to work for the money your family can scrape together. You're still going to be able to go to trial and things. It's just your defense is not going to be very good. You're not going to be able to afford the best lawyer. You're not going to be able to afford all the expert witnesses. You're not going to be able to afford your own independent investigative team that goes out and gathers their own independent evidence and does their own interviews. Like, you're just not going to be able to afford all the things that make a perfect, solid, quality defense.
yeah, it's a great point. It's longer than 15-second elevator pitch,
Too bad.
but
That's what you get.
there you go. ccwsafe.com to learn more. Please check them out, folks. Also, today's episode is sponsored and brought to you by Tactical RX. I'm going to turn time over to you since you have the lowdown on their products more so than I do.
Yeah, I was just at their operation, whenever that was, earlier this week or last week or something, where I saw them making glasses. I'll try and make this one shorter since I went over on the last one. Listen, you got to have safety glasses, and if you just want like bare bottom, like whatever, if it will get the job done, safety glasses, like just go to Home Depot and buy the $10 things that say safety glasses. They'll work just to that degree. But if you want quality stuff that actually like improves the clarity of what you can see, and is designed for you and is comfortable and gives you full protection, and especially if you need that in a prescription. For me, Tactical RX is the leader in that space. They've been doing it longer than anybody else. They've been doing it better than anybody else, and they're more affordable than anybody else. So they hit all the check boxes for me. TacticalRx.com. And if their website's at all confusing or you're just not sure what is best for you, just call them. These guys are so good at helping people over the phone and helping them get what they need.
Awesome. Yeah, fantastic. Again, tacticalrx.com. Thanks for those sponsor messages. And let's now get into today's topic, which I titled End of Another Year, but Many Changes in Laws, which is pretty typical every year. And we've been tracking legal changes across the U.S. for pretty much the entirety, even
2015.
Before concealedcarry.com existed.
Yes.
So this is a thing that we've been doing, you've been doing, we've been very passionate about. I think it's something we consider to be a responsibility of ours, is to keep track of that, to inform our followers, our people, our readers of our website, our listeners and viewers of our podcast, because, we're concealedcarry.com, and we want people to be responsible and not getting in trouble when they carry concealed.
Right.
And we have to keep track of it because one of the features in our Concealed Carry Gun Tools app, which, mind you, is just recently released an update on the Android version, hopefully soon on iPhone.
Right.
We keep track of the laws. So there's a legal summary section in the app, and so point is we have to track that. Anytime these law changes occur.
Yeah, it's critical. Somebody has to do it, is what it comes down to.
Mm-hmm.
And there's really not that many resources. I'm aware of like 4 or 5 companies in America who provide some sort of resource reference library of gun laws.
Right.
And when we looked at what was out there, we're like, none of these are what we want them to be. So we did our own. Our objective is to create concise, clear information. We don't want you to have to read 3 paragraphs and then hire a lawyer to interpret them to figure out what the law means. So our reference material, when you download the Concealed Carry Gun Tools app, and you go to laws and you click on a state and you get that summary, it is bite-sized, it is simple. Where possible, we go with yes, no answers. I mean, we really try and make it as easy as we can. But yeah, we have a responsibility to keep that updated. And that means we got to watch the laws like a hawk, because, we're not perfect. So there might be times we miss something or we're slow to notice something, but it's our responsibility to keep that stuff as updated as quickly as possible.
Right. And so when you look at, and I mean, I'm holding up my tablet here where I've got a record of all of the changes we've tracked this year. I mean, just as an example, I'm just going to highlight a number of states really fast: Massachusetts, Hawaii, California, New Mexico, Delaware, Arkansas, New York, Missouri, California again, Texas, West Virginia, Minnesota. I can't remember if I read Nevada already, Colorado for sure, New Mexico there again, Tennessee, South Carolina, Nebraska, Louisiana.
Yeah.
And I may have missed a couple in
Yeah,
there.
you might have. Yeah, I don't know if you said Alaska or Hawaii. I mean, yeah,
Yep.
Yeah, and this year's been maybe a little crazier than normal, but what we generally see is legislative bodies meet in spring months, winter and spring, kind of the first half of the years. Then we generally see most laws, depending on states, are all very different, but more or less, most laws go into effect not immediately when they're passed and signed, but at some future date. So, some laws are going to go into effect, any given random day of the year, but most of the time, April 1st, July 1st, January 1st. Those are the 3 kind of big, heavy law changing times of the year.
Yeah, it's not uncommon to see state legislatures, when they pass a bill, and of course signed by a governor into law, to, a lot of times those legislative sessions are in the spring, right? January to March, January to April, January to June, depending on your state and how busy, how active, how large a state is. Some states have stuff going on all year. Probably California would be an example, I would guess. But it's not uncommon to pass a law in March, and then it's like, well, when do we put this into effect? Well, let's pick July 1st.
A lot of times it's about, how many resources are going to be necessary to get something ready for that law change. Like we have some laws that were passed here in Colorado in April that will not go into effect until July of the following year of 2025.
Right.
Because they're like, oh, this is going to require a bunch of infrastructure. We're going to have to probably hire people, write software, and create licensing and applications and forms and processes and figure out how we're going to collect fees, right? All this drama.
Yep.
So yes, and you also have situations where laws don't get passed. What instead gets passed is basically we pass a resolution to put something on a ballot. So then that ballot is actually going into the election, and that law becomes law or doesn't become law based on the outcome of a vote during an election season. So those are all ways it happens.
Right. So probably the 3 common things we see are laws passed and goes into effect immediately.
Yeah.
That happens sometimes.
Sure.
Laws passed and goes into effect a few months later.
Yeah.
And and again, it's quite often about the halfway point of the year, or maybe January
April
1st of the year,
July 1st,
and then sometimes it's a year or 2 down the road because of a number of things that need to go into effect first or into place. So this is kind of something that it's worth noting. I mean, sometimes people do get confused because they'll hear their local news report about something getting passed and signed into law, from their in their particular state,
Sure,
or maybe even in their city, and they might think, oh, that's the law of the land now. And in the case of laws where maybe rights are restored or are expanded, that could be problematic because it might not actually yet, like let's say it's a constitutional carry law, right? It's like, ooh, constitutional carry is the law of the land now in my state, but maybe it doesn't actually go into effect until January 1 of the following year.
If you're Louisiana, you have it go into effect on Independence Day on July 4th.
I saw that, so and I think that's awesome.
Yeah, good, super valid point though. Yeah, that you got to pay attention to when these things go into effect. In fact, we have one law that got passed here in Colorado this year, where a portion of that one law, this one bill, a portion of it went into effect on July 1st of 2024. A portion of it went into effect on September 1st, 2024. And another portion of that law doesn't go into effect until July 1st of 2025.
Yeah.
All in one bill. This section goes into effect at this time, this section at this time, and this section at that time.
Yes. And it's a mess.
Yeah. It's a total crapshoot. Yeah. But anyway, so be it.
Right. All right. So we thought we would spend, the time with you all today on the podcast and as best as we can, highlight a number of key changes in laws um, to all of you. It's a good time to do that. End of the year, start of another. Some of these have already gone into effect, some are going to go into effect. So it's good to know about. And some of these things, I mean, one of the very common things we see regularly are, and these don't, some of these don't even necessarily require, in fact, in many cases, that they don't require a bill, an actual bill. And what I'm referring to is reciprocity changes,
Sure.
you
Yeah.
know. And so
Yeah.
there's always a number of those changes. Some states choosing not to honor other states, some are adding, like South Carolina is a big one this year. South Carolina used to be kind of the red-handed stepchild of the South in terms of firearm laws.
They are still to some degree.
They are some, yeah, but they've got a lot better in recent
Yes.
years, because it used to be like South Carolina, just getting a permit was a chore. Now they have constitutional carry.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They've come a long way. A couple disclaimers I would make that the stuff we're going to refer to today, almost without exception, has gone into effect at this point.
Mhm.
Because if it hasn't gone into effect yet, it's probably not on this list because we track this list based on when the thing goes into effect.
Right. That's a good point.
The second thing that's worth noting is this is not an exhaustive list. So if we don't mention some law, like that's we're not trying to give you a full list of every single thing that changed or went into effect this year. Yeah. So anyway, those are the disclaimers.
I'll add one more there, and that is, some of you may think, well, you're going to share something about, New Mexico, let's say. Well, I don't live in New Mexico, so why does that, apply to me? Well, maybe it doesn't. Although many of these things I think are important to know, because understand that just because I may be in Colorado and I have reciprocity with Texas in terms of my permit, um, when I visit Texas, I have to abide by Texas law in terms
100%.
of carrying
Yeah.
my gun there
Yeah.
and all of that. So that's relevant. The other thing, and now some of you might think, well, I don't really travel. Okay, that's fair. That's fine. Here's the other thing I would say in going through some of this, in particular, I mean, I'd like to think that some of you will hear the positive news, meaning rights being expanded in terms of concealed carry and firearm ownership, whatever. And that's nice to hear. It'd be like, hey, this is the trend that we're seeing on that side.
Sure.
And I'd like to think that we can continue generating momentum with such laws.
Yes.
To expand the Second Amendment for the rights of all Americans. On the flip side of that, I think I always look at some of these things and go, hey, there's been some things that have been passed. Like Colorado is kind of going the opposite direction of, say, South Carolina right now in terms of rights. California is always, and New York, always looking to restrict things further. And I look at some of those states as sort of a bellwether of, hey,
Yes.
this is the current tactic, if you will, of the anti-gun side.
There are clear patterns. There really are. So, I mean, what you see happening in California and Colorado is what you should expect to see happening in all the other anti-gun states within the next 2 to 3 years, and it's what you will see start getting proposed in the pro-gun states in 5-6 years. So, yeah, there are absolute patterns, and there's patterns on the pro-gun side as well. Like this year, we saw over 20 states institute laws that ban merchant code tracking.
Yeah.
So there's, but the point is, yes, like this is worth paying attention to, because you want to pick out like what are the tactics, what are the patterns, and what are the proposals that I might see come to me.
These are the sorts of things that, again, yes, if you're in a blue or purple state, you should really be paying close attention to these sorts of things, because like it's hard to think proactively and look ahead to the future and be engaged politically when you don't feel like there's anything going on. But I promise you that there are those on the anti-gun side that are constantly planning, scheming, looking for the next opportunity, the right opportunity, the right timing. I mean, it could be as simple as we just had this unfortunate assassination of a CEO of an insurance company in New York City, done with a 3D printed suppressor. And what looked to be, they're calling a ghost gun. It looks to me like actually a 3D printed Glock frame. Not even one of the kits that you necessarily buy, but just that I saw an image of
Actual
it. It looks like it
homemade,
was
yeah.
3D printed.
Sure.
And so it's like, that could be all it takes from as a catalyst for your state to then go, we need an anti-ghost gun law.
These things are drafted by the parties, and that they pass it down. They go find some local representative, say, "Hey, we want you to sponsor this bill," and maybe a couple tweaks are made to it to make it unique to that state or to address whatever they think might be necessary to get it passed. But yes, this is not like randomly here in Colorado and over there in California. This same law was proposed. What a coincidence! No. This is a national level strategy that's being employed and executed at the state level.
And those of you in more freedom loving states, you should be taking the opportunity as well. And you say, hey, look, such and such state now passed, whatever law that makes concealed carry or open carry or constitutional carry easier. You should be encouraging your representatives, senators, your governor, your local leaders, whomever to, hey, let's get on board.
Good point. Yep.
Anyway, where do we want to begin?
The top. So roughly, these are kind of from oldest to most recent order, kind of, sort of. And I'll add that some of these, I'm going to read this. I'm like, I don't even remember what that means. I'm going to have to go look it up. But anyway, I'll remember roughly what that means. So the first one I think we saw this year is Louisiana and South Carolina both passed constitutional carry pretty early in the year. So that was a
super
big
cool.
Yeah.
I mean, even Louisiana, I remember at one time was a little bit more
rough
on the left of the spectrum in terms of the Second Amendment, and now is like
hard swing.
Yeah,
hard swing. Post Katrina and now these other issues. I think we've seen a hard swing there. So they care a lot about being able to defend themselves. So that's really nice. South Carolina's constitutional carry went into effect right away after they passed it. Louisiana was delayed a little bit until July, but those are two new states that were added relatively early on.
The South Carolina constitutional carry bill also includes open carry without permit. I mean, that's what I consider to be true constitutional carry.
Sure. Like
you want to carry a gun, carry a gun. However you want to carry
however,
a gun.
Whatever. 100%. So that's pretty cool. Open carry it, conceal it, whatever. Good to go in South Carolina.
Yes, some of the devil being in the details of some of these things can be a little bit tricky because in some cases there are states that have constitutional carry laws that only apply to their residents.
That's true. They're not very many though. Those are exceptions.
Others are just, hey, it doesn't matter. You come to our state, you want to carry. What I noticed here is that South Carolina now honors all Idaho, Kansas, Mississippi, North Dakota, and South Dakota permits. And so that's why I just said what I said, because it's like, well, why would they need to actually specify which permits are honored if I'm visiting their state and I could just constitutionally carry anyway? So do you know the specifics on that one?
This is worth clarifying at a broad level, because I think this is probably one of the most misunderstood things in the concealed carry community that concerns me. And it's a bit of a hair splitting issue, but I'm a literal, very tactile, careful person. So I think we have to be very cautious when we confuse this idea of constitutional carry with permit reciprocity. So in any given state, with the exception of Vermont, and the other 20, however many constitutional carry states, they still issue permits and they still keep track of what other permits they do and don't honor. And South Carolina being one of those. So this is relevant. Why? Well, it's relevant because you might say, well, I don't have a permit that is honored in South Carolina, but they got constitutional carry, so whatever. I'm just going to keep on tracking with my gun. Well, that's not going to be the same. These states, and they vary by state basis, so I can't speak very specifically, but they have things that are different in terms of legal authority for somebody who has a permit versus somebody who is carrying just under the permitless carry or constitutional carry laws. Crap, you got Idaho that's got constitutional carry and then a basic permit and then an enhanced permit.
Right.
So we got three different sets of rules.
Right.
Oh, these are the rules that apply to you. These are the rules that apply to you. These are the rules that apply to those people. So it's really quite complex. You also have states where they have different levels of authority for constitutional carry residents versus non-residents. So yes, non-residents can carry constitutionally here, but we have some additional restrictions on you. Look at Maine as an example of that. So I think the thing to communicate here is, don't assume because a state has constitutional carry that you can just go do there whatever you want, or that whatever you would have been able to do in your state where you have a permit. We have to separate that and keep that separate. We get emails like this all the time from people who go to concealedcarry.com and they yell at us because they're like, oh, your map says that my permit's not valid in whatever, South Carolina, but South Carolina's got constitutional carry, so I'm good to go. And we're like, Yes, they do have constitutional carry. Yes, you can carry there concealed with some limited authority, but no, your permit is not valid there, and that's still highly relevant because that means that things that they restrict to permit holders only are not open to you because
Yep.
you do not have a valid permit there. So anyway, I think that's really important context anytime we talk about this constitutional carry stuff.
One thing that's also important to recognize when we get into this little issue we're discussing is how not having a permit can impact certain places that are off limits versus on limits or within limits.
Sure.
And by that, I'm really referring to there's some exceptions with respect to being within, was it 1,000 feet of a school, carrying concealed, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
You want to touch on that real quick?
Yeah, that's a very specific one that is kind of universal across all states. So,
which I think is important for people to understand.
The gun-free. Okay, let's see if I can get this right. The Gun-Free School Zone Act.
There you go. Yep.
Whew,
passed back in what, like 90 something?
Something. Yeah, it was in the 90s.
96.
Yeah, I think this is a Bush law. Anyway, what that act basically says is you can't have a gun within 1,000 feet of school unless. And there's a handful of exceptions. For example, like if you have a residence, if you live within 1,000 feet of a school and it's your property, then that's an exception. Things like that. But the relevant one to this conversation is it says unless otherwise permitted by the state.
Yep. And
that's a little bit up for interpretation, but how it's generally been interpreted is to mean unless you have a concealed carry permit, and that having a permit within the state law grants you that authority. So if, in the case of here in Colorado, for example, the state law grants that a person with a concealed carry permit can have a gun within 1,000 feet of a school. There's other school restrictions. That's a different thing.
Right.
But it otherwise would eliminate the federal restriction that would prevent me from having one. So in South Carolina, for example, if I don't have a permit that's valid in South Carolina, then but they have constitutional carry, I might be like, oh, cool, I'm good to go. But at a very technical level, you probably can't be within 1,000 feet of a school, just operating under constitutional carry in South Carolina. Yes. That probably requires a permit, unless their constitutional carry law is written in such a way so as to very clearly specify that.
Right.
And that's a little bit like, that would be a great court case. We could go argue that at trial and see how that sorts out. But that's just generally how it's been interpreted up till now.
Well, that's why I brought it up now at this point, just talking about, because a lot of these first two major changes in law this year that we're highlighting are both have to deal with constitutional carry. And so it's like, cool, awesome. There are some things that people should know that, for instance, I go on a daily walk, actually usually couple of daily walks every day now with my wife, just making a healthier lifestyle choice, right?
Good job, Robert.
And it's been nice. It's been lovely to go on those walks. I live within 1,000 feet of a school.
Yes, you do.
I walk within 1,000 feet of probably two other schools regularly. I'm not necessarily walking on their property.
Oh, but within 1,000 feet.
Walking on the sidewalk across the street from a school would be an issue.
It would be a huge issue.
Have a permit.
Yeah, if this was just some constitutional carry state, you're like, I don't need a permit, I'm just going to cruise around. That could be an issue. Yeah. We don't see that get prosecuted very often. No. It'd be very difficult to enforce. But we're talking at a very technical and semi-theoretical level.
It's still wise to know what the law is, because getting in trouble unknowingly is nobody wants that.
Yeah, no bueno.
So it could be as simple as you get stopped in your car on the street of a school. You're not on their property, but you're within 1,000 feet. Officer asks to see your info, and you maybe take the practice of, or maybe you're in a state where you're supposed to notify them that you're carrying concealed, and so you're like, oh yes, and here's my permit, and then they're like, well, bro, school's like right there, or maybe you don't have. I guess that would. Anyway, you know what I'm saying? Like they maybe ask a question like, any weapons in the vehicle?
Yes,
I've got one. So you see where I'm going with that.
Yep.
All right. Let's move on.
So I think you already said it, but just to make sure that I'm going through the list here. So South Carolina does now honor permits from Idaho, Kansas, Mississippi, North Dakota, and South Dakota. That changes here. Yeah.
This one's interesting to me. Nebraska now honors or allows each school district to write its own firearm policy.
Yeah, so this is not a state level thing anymore. The state law now says like, hey, let districts decide for themselves. Yeah. So maybe you're some like rural district in the middle of wherever, and you're like, like teachers can have guns, and so can students, or I don't know, whatever. But maybe you're like a very urban school in whatever major Nebraska city.
It's probably good.
What's a major city in Nebraska?
Oh, well, you got Omaha and Lincoln are probably
Omaha and Lincoln. Yeah, there you go.
Besides that, you're probably talking Scotts Bluff, Grand Island.
Maybe those people think of those as major metro areas.
They're not.
They're not.
Lincoln and,
Okay.
Omaha.
Lincoln and Omaha. So yeah, so you're some like, school district in Omaha. Maybe you're like, oh no, we just, we don't want to mess with that. The point is leaving it up to the school districts. I'm actually in big favor of that. Generally speaking, I'd rather just like, hey, state law allows you to have guns. But
Right.
anyway,
Right.
this seems to be a thing that tends to make a lot of people happy. This
Probably makes people in rural areas happy, but in urban areas,
less
so, perhaps.
yeah.
Depending on what those districts decide to do.
Putting more power into the hands of a school administrator. Yeah.
Tennessee now allows staff with permission from administration and various training and background check standards to carry.
Yeah, so this law is very specific. It's like, hey, the staff has to achieve all these, check mark things. They have to take this training. They have to have, they have to receive this, and then they also need direct permission from the administrator. So this is taking it a step further, saying, yes, we're allowing school districts to decide. Is how that really is going down.
Right.
But beyond that, we're saying, even if the school district gives you permission, beyond that, we're going to say this is also required. Now, I realize there's a difference between administrator and school district. I grew up in a home where this was highly relevant. My dad was a school administrator. So, if the principal of a school gives you permission, then that's what we're talking about in the case of Tennessee. But the school's principal is not going to be giving anybody permission if his superintendent of the school district said, we don't allow that in this district, right? So you really have to have kind of a district level person say, hey, yeah, I'm going to let my administrators decide for themselves. And then if that's the case, then an administrator saying, okay, on a case-by-case basis, I'm looking at my staff and saying, you, yes, you, no. And if I say yes, you still have to go out and get this training and achieve these various standards.
Yeah. I find the background check standards thing to be interesting because shouldn't teachers
already have background checks?
Be pretty well background checked?
So maybe it's a different type of background check. There's lots of different.
Sure.
But yes, I mean, you can't be a school teacher without being fingerprinted and background checked.
Yeah. And I'm well acquainted with that because I also married to a teacher. So not currently teaching in a public school, but she has.
Yes.
So open carry in Maryland, illegal, even with permits. So now we're talking about swinging the other direction here.
Yeah, I think what you have here is there's a couple on this list that are going to be interesting like this because you have some of these states where you're like, what? You mean open carry was legal in Maryland? Like, are you kidding me? With permit, it was. But what's happened is because of the Bruin decision, the Supreme Court decision with Bruin, you have a lot of these very anti-gun states who previously, basically, they didn't care what people with permits could do because they didn't give anyone a permit.
Yes.
So it was irrelevant. It was like, oh, yeah, okay, sure. I suppose technically, people with permits can open carry. But it was like, but it doesn't matter because we've issued like 25 permits. So now that they're being forced to issue permits, they're like, okay, time for us to go button up all the details. And this is an example of that one. Maryland saying, oh, crap, no, we can't, we're not going to let you open carry at the permit.
Heaven forbid.
Yeah.
It's been interesting to see what the Bruin decision has done repercussion wise.
Yes.
There's like the Bruin decision is a landmark decision that's going to continue to define and redefine case law moving forward in this country in big ways. But at the same time,
it's not over.
Exactly. But like you just said, in some cases, like New York is a great example where it's well, crap. It's like now we have to have a permit process in place, but now let's make it difficult to carry anywhere.
Yeah, let's make every public place off limits. Basically, is their approach.
Yeah,
and that's still more battles on that one before it's over. So yes, but you're going to see a couple things on the list like that. But that's what's going on. So if you're like, what, Maryland, do you still allow open carry? Well, yeah, for like the 25 permittees or whatever.
Right. And actually, I mean, I don't know. Do we still have instructors in Maryland in our instructor network?
I think we do. I think we have at least one in Baltimore.
Silver Spring, Maryland, it comes to mind.
Those guys, I don't know if they've been teaching in a while, but we have someone in Baltimore.
Yeah. So, I mean, permits have been a thing there for a while, but it's I think it's a two-day
class
affair.
And there's a one. So it's a two-stage thing. You have to get a license to be able to own a gun.
Yeah. And
then you have the separate, concealed carry thing, which they call the wear and carry.
Mm-hmm.
The wear and carry license.
Mm-hmm.
But before you get the wear and carry license, you have to get the license that allows you to just go buy a gun. So it's a whole thing.
Yeah. Anyway, what's next here?
Yeah. All right. See here, as of August 29th. Okay. This is an interesting one. So this one is a screw up on our end because this is something that's changed in 2022, but we failed to get it updated in our system until this year.
Mm.
So an apology associated with this one, but Delaware law limits the capacity of firearm magazines to 17 rounds. This law also bans the manufacture, sale, purchase, receipt, transfer, and possession of what they consider to be these, anything, a magazine with 18 or more rounds, anything more than 17. So yeah, that's a thing that somehow that slipped through without us noticing.
Mm.
So it's on our change log for this year.
That's because it's Delaware. Like,
Delaware is a funny place. I was just actually on a range with the firearm instructor in Delaware that we do some business
Delawareans. Is that
with.
what you say?
Delawarean? That sounds believable.
Yeah, anyway.
But I was just spent 4 days on a range with a couple of dudes from Delaware who are dealers of ours. They buy some products from us and resell them. And I was like, dude, in your state, do people still have to take out an ad in a newspaper with a minimum 35% circulation to their local zip code and post their permit application for the whole public to see? And he's like, yeah. I was like, what? So yeah, there's some that's one of those like most bizarre gun laws in this nation.
Yeah.
Is that Delaware newspaper crap. That's amazing.
I'm amazed they passed this law and actually extended it to be 17 rounds or less.
Yeah, 17 is the most generous capacity
out of
magazine
limited ones,
limitation I've seen. Yeah.
But again, it's so arbitrary because it's like, it's lame in that it's like, well, cool, you can buy a Glock 17 with a standard 17 round magazine, and that's cool. But go buy what is it? I think the Canic comes with a 18 round magazine, and it's like, sorry, tough
somehow
beans, you got to get
2
10
extra
round,
rounds.
Anyway.
Yeah, it is dumb. It is super dumb. And an unfortunate one on this one, there's no grandfather clause, so possession has become illegal. So if you had them already, you're supposed to be getting rid of these.
I'm sure this one's being contested.
Everything's always being contested.
There's a couple of cases right now that could have implications on laws like this one, laws like what we have in Colorado.
Yeah, I don't think in that district we have any. Well, anyway, but yeah, this one is.
There's something I believe is going to the Supreme Court that has to do with magazine capacity.
That would have an implication.
So we'll see.
Yeah.
Cool. June 21st. Rhode Island strengthens secure storage law. Firearms must be securely stored anytime they are not in the owner's immediate control.
So this is an interesting one. We didn't used to track, like if you went back a year ago, we didn't track secure storage laws. So it just wasn't in our app. It wasn't on our website. And at some point this year, I can't remember when it was, might've been April, May, June-ish. I was just like, this is becoming a thing. Like, it's no longer like one or two fringe states that have these laws. Like it's now like, half of them. So we've added a new section, a new, thing in our app and on the website that is the secure. I think it says secure storage requirements. And then obviously that's in there, on a per state basis. And we've, we also have a summary page for that. The summary pages are not in the app, but on the website, if you click on laws, we have a summary page where you can click on secure storage requirements. It shows all 50 states in one spot just for that requirement. So in the case of Rhode Island, okay, let me back up a little bit more. There's basically 3 flavors of this. Like it's not like, we have 30 states and each one is a little different. Like no, they're not. Like there's really 3 flavors. If your state has a secure storage law, it's one of the 3 flavors. So the Rhode Island flavor of secure storage is I word it this way. This is Jacob language. Firearms must be securely stored anytime they are not in the owner's immediate control. So it's a little bit on the, like I would call this like if we kind of had version 1, 2, and 3. This is the middle one. This is version 2 of the flavors of secure storage. It's not the worst. It's not the best. It's kind of right in the middle. But yeah,
it's kind of like, like in Colorado, for instance, and we'll touch on that, I think, or maybe that was last year's.
It goes into effect on January 1st. Well, no. So January this year, the home one went into effect. Our vehicle one goes into effect on January 1st.
I was just saying I'm not seeing it on our list, and that's because I think we had already tracked it on last year.
Yeah, I got past last year.
But like our version of this, there's a couple of actually there has to do with in the vehicle when you leave a gun in the vehicle, and also at home. But that's more specific about have to have secure storage when there's juveniles, essentially, right?
It specifies if there's juveniles in the home who don't have permission to access guns,
right,
and or felons or other people, prohibited persons,
right. Yeah. This Rhode Island one is interesting to me because it's like if it's not on me or in my immediate area here, control. Like it has to be securely stored.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter who you are.
So I could live in my house alone.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
And I have to have that gun securely stored if I'm not there.
That's right.
Yeah, that's pretty extreme in my opinion.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's not the worst.
I'm not saying that's irresponsible. Like it's responsible to store guns securely, but I'm a believer. People should be able to
Make grown-up decisions.
make grown up decisions. There
Yeah.
you go.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
That's a fun one.
Hmm.
All right. So now New Mexico, and we have several New Mexicos on this list, but on June 1st, polling places are now off limits in New Mexico to open carry. Concealed is okay. So if you can legally conceal, then you can continue to conceal in a polling place. But this, and we see several states who've done this. This is about it. It's like an intimidation concern.
Yep.
So I can't stand
Right.
outside of a poll place
Because
and
it
be
happens
like,
all the time.
vote Trump. Here's my gun. Like I don't know who's doing that.
Yeah, like I can't even think of an instance of that.
Yeah, like sneak up some AR-15s, go hang outside of a
Right,
poll booth, and be
right.
like Trump or else.
Right.
Like that's what they're trying to prevent here.
Right.
So no open carry at polling locations in New Mexico.
Yeah, we might as well hit on these other ones because it was also June 1st of this year, polling places off limits to firearms in Vermont. So
Yes.
for firearms, period. And that is also true here in Colorado.
Yes.
That went into effect this year.
Well, a lot more specificity in the Colorado one. Like we
Mhm.
get really into it. It's like within 100 yards of a polling place, or a place where a
100
ballot
feet.
can 100 feet, excuse me,
Mhm.
or a place where a ballot can be dropped off. So even like a drop box.
Yep.
So some of these states is very specific, like a place where someone can cast a vote. But
Yep.
in Colorado, we even have drop off locations where you could drop off a ballot. You can't have.
Yeah,
a firearm.
like this is very relevant to me because I don't have it active right now, but we've had at times a membership at one of our community, city-owned gyms.
Sure.
And there's
have a
a
ballot
ballot
drop-off?
drop
Yeah.
box right out front
Yeah.
within 100 feet of the
Yeah.
entrance.
Yeah.
And I can technically carry into that gym if I wanted to. But if there's voting going on and ballots being dropped off, technically I cannot.
You can.
Yeah,
I mean,
I can't walk through to the entrance.
I drive every single day
Mhm.
within 100 feet of a drop off
Yeah.
ballot box.
I mean, that's
I drive past a police
that's
station
conceivable.
in my neighborhood, and that police station has a drop off
yeah.
box.
And how would you even know about all of these? Because like
You know,
in a place like Colorado, like there's ballot drop off boxes
everywhere.
everywhere.
Yeah, they're everywhere. I mean, I live in the suburb of Arvada. I bet you we have 50 drop off boxes easily.
Yeah.
So anyway, yes, yeah. So we said New Mexico, Vermont, Colorado. Yeah, those are all ones on so far. There might be others that I've forgotten about that we'll get to, but
Yep.
polling places.
While we're on the subject of Colorado, and we'll come back to this other New Mexico thing, but Colorado now restricts the carrying of a firearm within 100 feet of polling places. Within government buildings, you might want to specify that.
That gets complicated.
Offices of elected officials and court buildings or any building with court proceedings is off limits.
Yeah. So government buildings is kind of a generic version of saying this, but it's not all government buildings that are blanketly prohibited. It's really about buildings where elected officials have offices or where they meet.
Yep.
So if city council meets there, that building's off limits. If a member of the city council has an office in that building is off limits. And that's true at the county and the state level as well. And then any building where court proceedings take place, that entire building. And this is a messy one, like our county building. We call it the Taj Mahal here in Jefferson County, Colorado. That building previously was kind of structured in half.
Yep.
Where if you went to the south, you were going into court area, and so you had to go through a secure checkpoint.
That part was secured. Yep.
And if you went to the left, that's the DMV or something like that. It's no big deal. So now that would change this because it's like no.
That whole building.
Any building where there's court proceedings. Yep. Oh, well, that building has court proceedings. Now that whole building has to be locked down. So anyway. Yes, that's the deal.
Yeah, and the other thing with offices of elected officials, where this gets, I think, really messy, is it is not uncommon for particularly like state U.S. representatives or senators to have their offices at times, like in their local, where their constituents are. It's not uncommon for them to just rent a space. Like they could have an office. We're in a kind of a
commercial
building with I don't know 14 or 15 units or however many units there are here. It's not uncommon for an elected official to rent a unit to have as their kind of touch point in that community of here's my office. Well, by the way that law is written, then this building would be off limits.
Correct. Yes.
And it's a privately owned building, but they can lease to an elected official. And boom,
I mean, this is where law gets messy because I think an attorney could also make the argument of like, well, the spirit of this thing is it's that unit.
Mm-hmm.
right? So the unit at the other end of the building, where there's walls and there's no way to walk from this unit to that unit, for the sake of this law, is a different building.
But you know,
like those are arguments that could be made.
Do you know where I've seen this though become sticky with respect to in the past, so with other federal offices are publicly, or I mean, when I say public, like privately owned buildings, in other words, open to the public, but that also have federal agencies leasing space within that building. Every time I've seen that, they have signs posted at the entrance of the building saying, no guns.
Which
because
is
there's federal
viable.
agencies in that,
yeah,
in that
because the
building.
way that federal law is written is like federally owned buildings or buildings where basically where federal employees operate full time.
And I encountered that in my past life of working for the General Services Administration and the Public Building Service, where I was responsible for federal building office space. And we haven't, like, you'd be surprised how many buildings are privately owned buildings that the government leases for federal agencies.
Doesn't surprise me at all. These guys waste our tax dollars every way they can. Why buy a building when you can waste our tax dollars renting one?
Yeah.
No, that sounds right.
Yeah.
Sure.
Coming back to New Mexico.
Yeah.
Now honors the South Dakota enhanced permit. Yeah. Also, it appears that New Mexico now honors all Idaho permits, not just the enhanced one, although it's unclear when that happens.
Yeah, that's a weird one. So when we find out about these law changes, and we're very proactive, we're paying attention to all sorts of things. We're subscribed to a lot of different notice boards and things where attorney generals send out notices and things like that. But sometimes one sneaks through, and even when we research it, we can't find out when it changed. And this is one of those. So I try and make a note when that happens. So I have no idea when New Mexico, out of the blue, decided to start honoring the Idaho enhanced permit. And probably what you have in a lot of these instances, like the state police, or an attorney general, or whatever, or Bureau of Criminal Identification, something like that, who's kind of responsible to maintain these reciprocity decisions, they just go update a website.
Yep.
And that's it. It's just like, you're just expected to notice.
Yeah.
And so that's a frustrating one for organizations like us, because we're like, crap, when did this change? I don't know. Luckily, we have enough that we have over 100,000 people have downloaded our mobile app, right? Historically, right now, I think that we have like 25,000 active devices with our app on it. So that helps, because you guys are the ones who tell us, like, oh no, like this app is not jiving with what I know. So you guys send us an email, and we're like, crap, yeah, this is like, we're wrong. Like, when did this change? We don't know. So anyway, yeah, that's true. New Mexico is now honoring the South Dakota enhanced and the Idaho enhanced, and we don't know when that changed on the Idaho one, but that's the case now.
Yeah, you touched on, I mean, like you said, something really key there that complicates this, and that is the fact that every state can be different in terms of which agency, which office, who has the authority and responsibility for determining reciprocity.
Yes,
because you're exactly right. There's probably I can't think of a specific example right now, but there's probably states where it's determined by legislature, by law. There's states where the attorney general's office determines that. There's states where the state police.
Yes.
So again, like you just said, that's a great point. Where a state, it's probably more likely in the case of like state police, where they're the determining agency. Where they're just like, well, I'll just update on the website. People will notice, right?
I mean, and like Nevada's like one where like there's a law on the books that determines the qualification for reciprocity.
Yeah.
But then it's up to the attorney general to review each state regularly and determine who does and doesn't meet the requirements.
Right.
Right. So yeah, it's all over the board. And what's nice though is that most states now are actually maintaining some list on some website somewhere. So at least we have some truly government published thing we can rely on. Whereas before, I mean, there were days years ago where I was making phone calls to attorney general offices all the time. It's like, I have a question about reciprocity for your state. Like, do you guys because we just didn't know. I had to make phone calls all the time. So at least now I'm appreciative that most of these guys are putting this crap online.
Yeah. Back to Colorado.
Yeah.
This one stung for me a little bit. Not that I spent a ton of my time on college and university campuses, but for a long time, law of the land here in Colorado was public university and college campuses. You could carry concealed on those campuses.
Yeah.
Private universities and colleges is kind of up to the university, but now it is all college and universities, no guns, no concealed carry, nothing.
Correct. And we also have some changes at the elementary, middle, junior high, and high school level in Colorado as well. But yes, so in Colorado, we were one of 3 states, only 3 in the whole country, that explicitly by statute forced all public colleges and universities to allow concealed carry.
Yep.
And so that was something I was pretty dang freaking proud of.
Yep.
I thought it was a pretty big deal. But yeah, that's gone now. So it's actually quite explicit. The way the law is written now is it's very specific. It's like, every child learning center,
Yes.
elementary,
I
middle,
noticed
junior
that.
high, high
Yep.
school, college, university, and seminary, public or private.
It used to be, it
Yeah.
didn't say anything about child care
Learning
center,
something,
learning,
whatever. Yeah.
So like when I had kids in preschool, it's like, okay, doesn't apply.
Guess I'm good. Yeah.
But now all of a sudden, like,
Yeah,
so
much
like,
more exhaustive and
Yes.
specific, and it specifies now private and public.
Yep.
And the other change that happened, in addition to nixing colleges and universities in Colorado, the other school one in Colorado that's relevant there is basically previously there was, for lack of a better word, a loophole that would allow a school district to be able to hire private security, whether that was arming a teacher or bringing in some other external private armed security for their school.
Right.
And the law still allows that could be done at a learning child center, whatever the basically preschool thing is, and at colleges and universities, but not at an elementary, middle, junior high, or high school. Those schools no longer have that as an option. It's been yanked.
Which is
horrible, stupid.
Yes,
bad.
Especially for some of those. I think it should be allowed anywhere, but I know that for some of the rural school district, that's a major issue. So some of those, like, very much
police rolling out is 30-minute drive
at least.
Yeah,
for some of them. Yeah. Yep.
Like here's a funny one. My kids go to two different schools. I have two children. They're at different schools.
Yep.
One of those schools is a high school, 9 through 12. The other school is a K through 8. Okay. Those two schools share one cop.
Yeah. Yep.
So one cop between two separate schools, which are not that close to each other, by the way, depending on traffic, probably 10 to 20-minute drive between them. That's one cop. And you know which school they're at any given time. They're the patrol vehicle's parked in the front.
Sitting there. Yeah.
So if I was administrator of one of those schools, I'd be like, yeah, we're going to bring in a full-time person to supplement when the cop ain't here.
Yep.
Not an option.
Yeah. I'm with you there. That's unfortunate. Nevada no longer honors Oklahoma's permit.
Yeah, we just got to talk about Nevada. So they have some very specific statutory requirements that a state has to comply with. So Nevada feels that Oklahoma no longer meets those requirements.
Interestingly, it probably has to do with South Carolina, I don't know, going constitutional carry or changing their, I don't know. Minnesota no longer honors South Carolina, but meanwhile, they've added Connecticut, Hawaii, and Ohio to the list of states.
Yeah, something that's not, I could be wrong about this specific instance because that's not spelled out in our little change log that we're keeping, but something that we do see a lot that's causing issues is you have states now that are creating provisions for 18, 19, and 20-year-olds to get permits.
Oh, yes.
And that might have been the case here with South Carolina. So South Carolina, like, okay, we're going to now have a provisional permit or whatever temporary permit for an 18, 19, 20-year-old to get this permit. And so then you have a state like Minnesota's like, well, we used to honor your permit, but now we can't because our law doesn't allow that an 18-year-old can carry a concealed gun. But if we honor your permit, we're allowing an 18-year-old from South Carolina to come to Minnesota and walk around with a concealed gun. I don't know if that's the case here in this specific instance, but we do see that impacting reciprocity a lot in recent years.
Yeah, it's a great point. And actually, I'm glad you mentioned that because there may be some on the podcast even that are listening that I know we've seen questions that have come in over the years from 18, 19, 20-year-olds asking questions about how to get a permit or how to carry, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it would be nice. I mean, for me, it shouldn't be a deal breaker. If this were the case in Minnesota and South Carolina, and I don't remember if it is, if this were the case, then it should be a simple enough thing for Minnesota to be like, we'll honor standard permits, but not provisional permits. But that means that South Carolina, if this is the case, that they have to make sure that they're distinguishing between what's a provisional and a permit. But then again, maybe your Minnesota State Police or Attorney General's like, we're not going to burden law enforcement with determining whether or not a permit is provisional or not. So anyway, my point is there should be a world where this could still jive.
They couldn't they just say we honor all permits from such state,
ages 21 plus.
21 plus.
You'd think that would be doable, right?
Complicated.
But anyway, this is already a complex world.
Yes.
This patchwork of enhanced and non-enhanced and basic and constitutional and permitless and resident and non. It's so one more thing would I don't know.
Which is why we're talking about it.
Yeah.
And hopefully this is helping some of you go like, oh, wow, yes, it is complex. Let's see. West Virginia will now issue non-resident permits. That's kind of an interesting change this year.
Yes. Yeah. And we've seen a couple other states that are doing that now too, including New York, which we'll get to on this list. But yeah, so I suppose if you live across the border and you commute to West Virginia maybe, and you want to get a West Virginia permit for whatever reason, now you can do that. You can apply.
Right. Yep. Can be quite relevant for some of those situations. Texas now does not honor Wisconsin.
I don't remember what the drama was on this one, but yeah, if you are living you got a Wisconsin permit, Texas is no longer green on the map. It's now a no-go.
California now prohibits carry in places having a primary purpose of dispensing alcoholic beverages for on-site consumption. Further, when carrying, one cannot consume an alcoholic beverage or controlled substance.
Yeah, so here, by the way, for the record, here's some gun control I am on board with. I'm perfectly happy. I'm going to be good with the federal law that says if you're carrying a gun, you can't you can't consume an alcoholic beverage. I'd be cool with that. I just don't think that we should be mixing guns and alcohol. But I'm not cool with restricting any premise that serves an alcoholic beverage. That's utterly ridiculous.
Yep.
But we do see that in lots of states, and California now is one of those.
Yeah. Yep. It's not the only state that does that, but so it actually kind of surprised me that wasn't already the law.
Yeah, that's one of those where you're like, oh, yeah, okay.
Yep. But again, it could be one of those things like you were saying towards the beginning of the episode where it's like they weren't that concerned about putting that into law because there weren't that many people that probably qualified for a permit to begin with. I mean, like,
sure, it was very county
California
specific.
Was if you lived in
LA County.
Yeah, good luck getting a permit. But if you're in one of like Shasta County,
sure,
like up north, rural, more rural,
Yuma or Placer,
no problem.
Or Fresno,
sure, right,
yeah.
All right, Missouri open carry updated to legal, generally speaking, but local jurisdictions can regulate however they want. Okay, so open carry. So the issue is open carry, and well, that's so interesting. It's generally illegal, but local jurisdictions can regulate.
This is just like Colorado.
So it sounds like they don't. Do they not have a preemption statute in Missouri?
Not for open carry.
Yeah.
So yeah, and this is another thing you can track in our app. You can always check and see if there's a firearm preemption law in any given state. That's something we track on a per state basis.
Right.
You can look that up. But that's again, that's another place where we're kind of looking at it from a very simplified perspective. Is there or is there not one? But let's say if there is a firearm preemption statute, which basically says local jurisdictions cannot pass laws that are more strict than the state laws, right? Well, if there's no state law about open carry, if there's just no guarantee of the right, then I think the argument could be made that, well, then local jurisdiction can do whatever they want, and they're not in violation of the preemption statute. The other reality that we have to accept is that local jurisdictions ignore preemption laws all the time.
Mm-hmm.
We got legal marijuana all over the country. That's against federal law, right? So you have that drama all the time too.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't remember specifically in the case of Missouri what the drama is, but the takeaway is if you live in Missouri, open carry is now a city by city, county by county, potential legally or not thing.
Yep. Okay. Refined South Carolina school rules, both K through 12 and college campuses, to allow an inside an attended or locked motor vehicle and secured in a closed glove compartment. So we're talking about firearms being, so in other words, like we have this in Colorado, basically, right?
Very
now,
comparable.
Our law got a little bit more specific in that it has to now be securely stored
in an unattended vehicle,
right?
But that didn't really impact the school thing because it was already the case.
True, but basically, South Carolina now you can have a firearm on a K through 12 or college campus if it's it's allowed inside an attended vehicle. So you're in the vehicle, like
good to go.
Drop your kids off at school.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, cool. Or locked motor vehicle and is secured in a closed glove compartment, closed console, closed trunk, or closed container secured by an integral fastener and transported in the luggage compartment of the vehicle.
Yes. So, which is interesting if you have no luggage compartment. I drive a truck.
Right.
So, or if you have a motorcycle, maybe motorcycles have some luggage compartments. I suppose it depends on the bike.
They do.
Yeah. But anyway, the point is, in Missouri, or wait, where are we? Not Missouri.
South Carolina.
We're in South Carolina now. So in South Carolina, the deal is if you're in the car, cool, no problem. You can have guns with you in the car, no problem. But if you get out of the car, the gun has to go into some sort of secured container with an integral fastener. And that container is supposed to go in the luggage compartment, so if you have a trunk, I suppose it's definitely better to put in the trunk.
Okay, so closed glove compartment, that's not going to be in a luggage compartment.
No, I mean, maybe a glove compartment is a luggage compartment.
Closed console.
This is very specific. This is specified.
I'm guessing it's a comma or in a closed container secured by an integral
fastener. That probably makes more sense.
That's probably what it is. And transported. So like you have
or in a closed container secured by.
You know what's interesting about stuff like that is it's like I roll up to my kid's school. I got to get out of the vehicle, but I'm carrying. Well, and I don't have let's say I don't have a glove compartment or console. That might be kind of rare, but I think probably, but let's just suppose like I'm going to put it in a closed container. I'd have to get out of my vehicle
with the gun.
Yeah, and walk it to say the trunk of my car potentially, based on how this is worded. Okay. Anyway,
good luck with it. This is why we recommend. We've always been on the side of having some sort of small lockable safe or handgun lockbox in the passenger compartment of your vehicle for these kinds of situations.
Right.
Yeah.
And now we are to that point where New York will now issue permits to non-residents, which that's fascinating to me.
Yep. No problem.
I'm curious what I'm guessing. I haven't looked into this specifically, but that you've got to comply with New York training standards. So you probably have to take a class.
You have to do all the things that New York orders are required to do to apply, which is pretty significant.
Yeah. Like this would be a huge burden. It's not like me, little Riley Bowman in Colorado, USA, is going to be like, I'm going to get me a New York permit.
Yeah, you're not going to mail in some paperwork and have it show up in the mail.
Like you're going
to go hang out in New York for a while. And you're going to fill out a lot of paperwork, and you're going to give them the passwords to your social media accounts.
Right.
Yeah.
But you live just across the border in Pennsylvania or something like.
Yeah, you live in New Jersey. You work in New York.
Maybe worth it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
Well, good to know. Arkansas updated restaurants and colleges and constitutional carry. So that's a very generic note. So tell us a little bit about that.
Here's restaurants. So Arkansas's restaurant deal went to this. You may carry in a bar only with an enhanced permit. I've never seen this before. This is very unique. Restaurants are okay. So the difference between bar and restaurant now, we're making some differentiation. So you can only carry in a bar with an enhanced permit, but you can't carry in a restaurant no problem. That's fine. And they define restaurant as places where complete meals are actually and regularly served and have a seating capacity of at least 50 people and have the capacity to serve suitable food for its guests. A bar is a place where complete meals are not regularly served and don't have this minimum seating capacity. So restaurant, like all good. It's no different than any other place. Go pack and heat with, all, like based on whatever existing laws. But in a bar, no. Got to have the enhanced permit. Yeah, that's the rub on that one. And then obviously they also updated colleges. So let's check that one. So here's the deal for Arkansas colleges. Concealed guns allowed by law on public campuses for enhanced permittees only. The schools can limit locations and who carries. So both of these are sort of like, hey, let's take these two things and let's not say you can't do them, but let's limit them to those who have the enhanced permit. So more distinguishment between the standard and the enhanced permit in Arkansas.
And what changed with respect to constitutional carry there?
Oh, so the constitutional carry in Arkansas has been
that's always been
confusing issue.
Right.
So it's like a law was passed, and that law was kind of like, well, if you interpret it this way, constitutional carry is fine now, and if you interpret it this way, it's not. So then the Attorney General came out. This is maybe a year or two. I'm not sure on the timeline. It's off the top of my head. But the Arkansas Attorney General came out and said, hey, no, like, we do have constitutional carry. Like, that's how we're going to interpret this. And then in this legislative session, they said, you know what, like, it's still confusing because not everybody knows about the Attorney General session. So let's just change the actual statute to make it explicit and clear. So constitutional carry continues to be a thing in Arkansas, but now it's explicit by statute, whereas previously it was confusing and clarified by Attorney General.
Yeah, cool.
I think.
Delaware now has vehicle secure storage law.
Delaware. So vehicle secure storage in Delaware. Let's see. It reads as follows. This is again. This is Jacob language. In an effort to make this simple, I've taken all secure storage laws and I've put them in 3 categories.
Yep.
But here we go. This is both about home and vehicle, so it has both in here. There are legal consequences if one fails to secure their firearm, and that leads to a minor gaining unauthorized access. Specific to a vehicle, it is a crime to leave a firearm unattended in a vehicle unless it's in a locked container, trunk, or locked rack.
Mm-hmm.
So it's actually Delaware, and this is something we haven't seen much. Their secure storage law is more strict in a vehicle than it is in a home.
Yeah.
So in the vehicle, if the vehicle's unattended, that gun's got to be locked up in that car. And it doesn't specify that the glove box or console would qualify or not qualify. It just says locked container, trunk, or locked rack.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Which could be relevant. You see glove compartments all the time that have, a key, a lock, or whatever.
Sure.
But we do, and I bring that up because there are instances where we see similar language, but specifies a glove compartment or center console does not qualify.
Or specifies that they do, as we just saw in the last one we read.
Exactly, right.
Yeah.
That's why it's good to know
Yes.
What applies to you and your jurisdiction.
They are kind of silly places to lock guns traditionally, because traditionally a locked console or glove box takes all of about 5 pounds of pressure and a screwdriver to get open. But, yeah.
Right.
To each their own.
All right. So I got a question for you.
Yep.
Because, and this caught me off guard a little bit, but I just happened to notice because we talked about it earlier. Earlier we said New Mexico also appears to now honor all Idaho permits, not just the enhanced one, but it's unclear when that happened. But this next note, Jacob says, New Mexico no longer honors Alaska, Idaho, Tennessee, or West Virginia.
Yeah, this is about a 6 months break between these. So at some point during the year, someone contacts us
again.
Yes. Yeah. So someone contacts us and says, hey, your site says that New Mexico doesn't honor the Idaho enhanced permit, and their site says they do. And we're like, oh, crap, you're right, our bad. So we change it and update it. We put it in the change log. And then, however many months go by, and New Mexico's like, hey, we no longer honor Idaho along with these other states. And so it's like, oh, okay, switch it back. So, yes, like, it's just,
so understand.
I don't know when it changed, but it changed again this year.
Right.
On our site, if you were following our information only, it looks like it changed twice this year.
It probably would have been good if we had remembered that
earlier in the conversation.
Depending on which part of the episode people listen to.
I can't keep track of all this stuff, guys. I can't. I obviously.
That's why we have.
I do keep track of it. I can't remember it off the top of my head. Yeah. And I'm not from Idaho, unlike you, so it's just not the kind of thing that would stick out to me with a significant amount of.
Again, I probably wouldn't have noticed, except that like just 10 minutes ago we talked about now it honors Idaho permits, and I'm like, wait a minute, now it says it doesn't. So
correct. So so New Mexico drops Alaska, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Idaho, Tennessee, and West Virginia.
Yeah.
And again, I just don't remember the reasons why.
Sure.
On that one. All right.
Huh.
Don't know.
California court ruling prohibits firearms in state parks.
This is relevant for a lot of reasons. Certainly because touristing in California often includes state parks and national parks.
Sure.
So a reminder that restrictions in a national park match those of the state park in the state where the national park is located. So when California changes how they manage or allow or prohibit guns in their state parks, that impacts all the national parks, monuments, memorials, anything operated by the National Park Service in California, of which there are several. So yes, now guns are prohibited in all California state parks and in anything else operated by the National Park Service in California. So like Yosemite National Park, for example.
Yeah. All right. Probably not a huge surprise for people that are like, oh, it's California, right?
But it's an annoyance.
It is an annoyance for sure.
Yeah. And they got beautiful state parks and national parks in California.
Absolutely, they do.
Yeah.
Hawaii passed new laws, and this has been in the news quite a bit. Hawaii passed new laws that define places that are off limits, and that is a very extensive list. Taking the kind of the New York approach here.
Yeah, it's like, well,
how many places can we say no guns, no carrying, no concealed carry, etc.?
Previously, we didn't have any places off limits because we just didn't give a single person ever a permit.
Yeah, Hawaii was a very difficult.
Yeah,
place.
now that we're going to be forced to give people permits, we're going to make it. I mean, we're not going to read this because we shouldn't have time. But yeah, the massive volume of places that were added to the places off limits. It's all in our apps. If you live in Hawaii, you can go.
Right.
You can go see it in the app. But it's a long list.
Right. Yeah, you actually, since you mentioned it's a long list, I'm like, yeah, I want to go see that. Okay, to give you an idea, I'm scrolling.
Yeah, like there's some on here that are unique. Like I love this one. Any building or office owned, leased, or used by state or county and adjacent grounds.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, here's another interesting one. Any public or private hospital, mental health facility, nursing home, clinic, medical office, urgent care facility, other place in which medical or health services are customarily provided, including adjacent parking areas.
You see that you see that quite a bit actually in here. So like
But if you're a private practitioner, you're just some random dude who's a doctor. Sorry, I'm talking too loud. Riley's turning down the volume on me. If you're just some private doctor dude who's got his own practice with his own office, you own the building and the land.
Yeah.
Too bad for you. Hawaii
Yeah.
says no guns allowed because you provide health services.
Well, and again, that adjacent areas thing is interesting. You see it pop up a couple of places. Like here's another example: any amusement park, aquarium, carnival, circus, fair, museum, water park, or zoo, including adjacent parking areas. Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
Here's one I've never seen anywhere. Any shelter, residential, or programmatic facility or adjacent parking area operated by a government entity or charitable organization serving unhoused persons, victims of domestic violence, or children, including children involved in juvenile justice system.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not aware of any other state that's got anything like that.
That first one though that you read about office owned building or office owned, lease, or used by state or county and adjacent grounds, that's
a little up for interpretation.
That's pretty extensive.
Amusement parks, aquariums, carnivals, circus, fair, museum, water park, or zoo, including adjacent parking areas.
All public library property.
It's crazy.
Buildings, facilities, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera,
Yeah.
and adjacent grounds and parking areas. So anyway, Hawaii, and I know there's a bunch of legal challenges happening there as well, just like there have been in New York. Because, I mean, at what point do you? I mean, because Bruin basically said, okay, there is a constitutional right to carry a gun on your person
outside of your home, in public,
right? And so, okay, that means we got to issue permits. All right, so we issue permits. How far can we go to then? But you can't carry here. You can't carry there. You can't carry. I mean, it's just like that. This is wild to just see how long I have to scroll to read all those exceptions.
And that's that. If you actually, if we pasted the laws in there, it'd be much longer. This is like us trying to summarize them.
Right. And here's, of course, New York's as well, which is very similar. I'd actually say it's a little bit longer to scroll through.
It is longer. Yeah.
So, my goodness. Anyway, good to know. I think probably Hawaiians are a little bit. The folks I know there that have been thrilled to go get and apply for their permits, because again, before it was virtually impossible. They're probably a little bit up to speed on this, but we're bringing it to you as well so that you know. Hawaii also passes secure storage law for vehicles. Okay.
Yeah, this is the best of the three versions of this. But basically, here's how I word it. There are legal consequences if one fails to secure their firearm, and that leads to a minor gaining unauthorized access.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I understand why such laws get passed. I mean, it's not uncommon. I don't know if I'd say on a weekly basis, but I just saw a news story a week or two ago. And it actually wasn't a new event. It was referring to someone being sentenced from something that happened before. A mother that left a firearm unsecured in vehicle. Her child got access to it, shot themselves, died. Those things are absolutely tragic. They should not happen. It makes me a little bit angry, sad, but definitely also angry. Because like it's one thing when there's mistakes happen. In this case, and this mother is going to serve probably as much time as they could give her for this, because she had a habit, or it was like, I think it was like her ex-boyfriend or ex-husband testified against her, basically saying she was known to do this, to leave her firearm just in the car and leave her kids, in there. She ran into the, C-store or whatever,
Yeah, if you're reckless or negligent, and I think that qualifies as both in the eyes of an average jury.
Yeah. And like, I'm a big believer in, like, let's be adults and let's make adult decisions on things. But that kind of thing is one of the reasons why people feel so justified to pass such laws.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's fair. Like, I understand that.
Yeah, we understand the intent and the motive.
Yeah. Because, I mean, we don't want that to happen. But the reality is someone's irresponsible like that, a law is probably not going to change that. It may for a few people.
Probably not. But I mean,
But
we also have a serious firearm theft from vehicle problem in this country.
huge.
Massive problem. I mean, probably one of the biggest problems we have in our country is like firearms being stolen out of
It's one of the
cars.
number one things I believe targeted for vehicle thefts.
Yes, yes, and I think it's currently like the number one source of illegal guns is stealing them from cars.
Yeah.
So I think yes, like what we see is a lot of laws getting passed to try and discourage people from leaving guns in cars.
Yes. A couple more here, and then we're wrapped up. I can't believe we made it through this in a little more than an hour. And thanks to everyone for being a part of this. And hopefully, you've learned something from this discussion today. Massachusetts updated places off limits.
Yeah, we're not going to get into that one.
I was expecting a whole long thing I'd have to scroll through, but
we need to clarify some things in this one. So hopefully, by the time this goes live, I'll update the app because I'm looking at it and saying, I think that we can do a better job of the way we publish this one. But
yeah.
But it's the same as the Hawaii and the New Yorks, the New Jerseys, the Marylands.
Yep.
We have to issue permits, so we're going to go back and reaffirm some of our drama here. And I will add that this, though, that's unique about Massachusetts, that Massachusetts does have some things that are city-specific. So like Logan Airport has its own drama. Boston has its own drama. So those are things we try and keep in there as well.
This is another kind of just, we'll call it, I mean, it is what it is, a call to action. If you don't have the Concealed Carry Gun Tools app, you should have it. Because I'm going to reference something else here just as a little pitch as to why you should have this. But I'm looking at Massachusetts places off limits. And then what's the very next category, Jacob? Duty to retreat. And it just was that reminder of, oh, yeah, Massachusetts, you have a duty to retreat before using any force, except when you're in your dwelling. And that just, that's one of the strictest standards in the U.S.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about 11 states. 11 states that would fall into that category. So, so Massachusetts is a gross minority in that case. But
duty to retreat to use any force.
Yes. If you can safely retreat along with the other innocent people you're defending, then you have a duty to retreat.
Yeah.
So our app is awesome. It's free. There's no ads in it. And as Riley mentioned, we're just rolling out this new big update, which is we've had to remove some features. Some of those features will be re-added, but we rebuilt the app.
This is a complete
it's a complete rebuild.
Let's be clear about that.
And so that we hit a point where it's like, okay, even though the app is not to the final point where we want it to be, it is at a point where we feel it's better than what's currently published. So we just rolled out this update. It's live on Google Play. I think it will be in the Apple App Store by, probably by the time this podcast is published. So anyway, go get it downloaded.
Cool. Do it.
Concealedcarry.com/app will get you a bunch of information on our site and the links to each store
there you go.
respectively. But concealedcarry.com/mobile app, if you type it into a phone, should take you directly to either the Google or the Apple.
Right.
Yeah, it should see what device you have and direct you accordingly.
Yep. There you go. So again, those links, concealedcarry.com/app, which is another great way of getting to the app eventually if you want to download it, but has information about the apps. But also concealedcarry.com/mobile app to just get automatically redirected to your respective store to download.
Yep.
We hope that you'll do that. Also a reminder before we have two more legal updates we'll mention here, but before I get to those, one more shout out to our sponsors of today's episode, CCW Safe, ccwsafe.com, and tacticalrx.com. Thank you, our sponsors. Ohio, duty to inform, revised. And this I took note of because Ohio has been one of those states for a long time. I've always just known, and I've spent a fair amount of time in Ohio, that if pulled over, I had a duty to inform. But apparently that's changed.
In fact, we've seen a lot of good changes in Ohio in the last several years.
Yep.
And this is one of those. So now you only have a duty to inform if asked, which is actually, I'd say, like the standard. Like that's how most states
are like that.
You can't lie. Do you have a concealed carry permit? You gotta be like, maybe. Right? I'm not telling you, man. So yes, now when asked, you have a duty to notify and to provide the permit, but no longer do you need to volunteer the information proactively.
Yep. Cool, out of Ohio there. And then the final one, Jacob.
New Hampshire now honors Montana permits. Good old freedom-loving New Hampshire. So I don't know what the deal was with Montana before, but now we're good.
Yep. Cool. There you go. That is, I don't know how many, but like 50 at least legal updates for the year 2024 that are good for you to know. And again, we will continue to track these things going forward as we've always done. Uh, Again, you can go directly to our website, concealedcarry.com, click on the law tab or the link. It's pretty obvious. It's right there toward at the top of the page. And you can pull up a lot of legal information right on the website, including more stuff than what's on the app. Like I do appreciate the legal summaries state by state by state to reference
Yes.
those really quickly.
Yes.
When you just like what states do have duty to inform, boom, and then you can quickly see, okay, when I'm in these following states, because it can be a little bit of a chore to go through state by state by state by state by state and look that up if you're curious, but you can see those summaries on the website.
Yeah, topic summaries on the website, whereas the app only gives you the state summary.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I'm proud of the fact that we've developed this app going back years now, because I've spent quite a bit of time on the road and I have regularly referenced our own app for these same resources like we've covered here today. For I am now traveling through Ohio, Iowa, Arizona. I've been to a lot of states over the years, and I have pulled up that app. I don't know how many times to just remind myself of those kinds of things when I'm in. It's you're in Rome. Do as the Romans. You got to follow their law.
It's a labor of love.
Yep.
I mean, that app. We're into that app more than $500,000. So please take advantage of the free resource that we make available to you.
Yep. I apologize for not seeing a lot of comments come in from viewers today, but thanks Scott and Joseph and Eddie for checking in. Colorado laws got me thinking about moving. I understand that, totally do.
Us too.
We also need good people here too. And then Eddie saying hello, and I recognize Scott's. I didn't mention it, but I posted it on the screen earlier, saying he's thankful for this excellent information. So. Awesome, guys and gals. Thank you, everybody. And again, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to all of you. Hope it's a wonderful time, a wonderful season, that you spend time with those that are most important to you, that you're able to do so safely. And until next time.
That's right. Train right, train off, and train safe.
So you can fight hard, fight fast, and fight true. Take care.